Welcome to this screencast concerning the evolution of English dialects through the ages. In this screencast, I'll be talking about the first definition of what is a dialect. Then I will continue by talking about the appearance and spreading of RP and its opposition to dialects. And I will finally point out how dialects and RP could start cohabiting in the modern society. I will end the screencast by making a short conclusion. But let's first start by getting to know what we mean by a dialect. A dialect is originally a variant of a language, and especially coming from a certain region of a country. When we observe how a dialect is spoken and where it comes from, we notice that even if it might differ from a region to another, it always takes us back to our early origin and our linguistic roots. This is to say, the Anglo-Saxon, the Latin, North, Celtic, or even the Norman roots. Like every language, a dialect is known for having different characteristics. They can be easily understood by people which English is not in the first language. The accent related to a certain dialect can also differ from one village to another. This is what we call an isogloss. As an example, we can take the sentence now then, which in the Yorkshire is pronounced like this. Now then. Yorkshire is here 6 on the map. But if in Hull, here, we say this sentence normally, when we travel to the west, until here in Manchester, number 5 on the map, we will see that there is a slight difference. Now then becomes na den, nar den. We face here a perfect example of what an isogloss is. But the fact is that a dialect, when too rarely spoken or confronted to the evolution of the language, may die as the time goes. This is of course a danger for the spoken language. Let's move on now to the appearance and progression of RP, type of language considered as the enemy of dialects. RP is the short form of the term received pronunciation, which first came from a southeast regional accent. RP evolved through time and strongly increased thanks to the Industrial Revolution, but also the development of the boarding schools Eton and Rugby, and the launch in 1922 of the famous BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. As talking on the radio was something serious, you had to have a neutral accent, something like that everyone could understand. RP was this alternative to dialects. We can compare RP to our Standaard Nederlands in Dutch. Moreover, RP was also seen as the language used by the Queen, and therefore, as the Queen spoke it, everyone else also had to. And speaking dialect was considered as a social disadvantage. As a consequence to this, Cockney, a regional working class dialect, was decreed as a socially inferior language. It is only in the mid-19th, during the Second World War, that the change appeared in the way of speaking. Wilfrid Pickles, radio news announcer at BBC, wanted to make it more difficult for the Nazi to mimic English, if it turned out that they infiltrated the BBC. Therefore, Pickles started to speak Yorkshires on the BBC4 radio. Nowadays, RP has lost its prestigious position, and it is even considered as ultra posh, only spoken and used by the royal family and upper classes. From this period onwards, RP declined and people started again to speak dialects, even though they changed through the time. Let's see now how dialects could spread again and mix with RP. This reappearance of dialect led to its mixing with RP. We call this the U and the non-U. We use this to differentiate the English upper classes, the U's, and the aspiring middle classes, the non-U's. Even though it does not mean that a U person should necessarily be more educated than someone else. A few examples of this these differences are with the sentences like to have a bath in U, meaning to take a bath in non-U, to have lunch opposed to the non-U to have dinner, and a lavatory paper in U will become in a non-U a toilet paper. From all these expressions came a book called Noblesse Oblige, and within an article called The English Aristocracy, written by Nancy Mitford, partisan of the U people. Let's go now to the last parts of the screencast and discover why we can nowadays talk about a real resurrection of dialects. As said before, posh RP and dialects could really mix together, meaning that nowadays every social classes use posh vocabulary as well as dialects. A clear paradox to this fact is how even the pronunciation of the Queen's language changed through the time, reaching a slightly accent close to the Southeast English accent. Her vowels have, for instance, slightly flattened, going from a posh bad to a Southeast bad, even though it's not bad to have a bed. This accent was later called Estuary English, a language little bits in between RP and Cockney. This Estuary English was later adopted by politicians like former Prime Minister Tony Blair. One of the best examples of this resurrection is a call center situated in Newcastle. People working there are simply asked to speak their proper dialect, whatever the region it comes from. Dialects are considered there as prized possessions and something pleasing to hear. The manager, Lawrence Fenley, thinks that talking to customers with such an accent is like talking to friends, and this will therefore mean that clients will feel more comfortable. An idea approved by his brand consultant, James Hammond, saying that today's society really works through an emotional communication. It's therefore better to use an accent to make someone feel comfortable instead of using the authority with RP. What we can remember from all this is the following. The early society was created based on many different dialects and accents, what we call the isogloss. Later in history, people had to face the appearance and widespreading of RP and posh dialects, considered as the real key to success. But we finally know that this posh dialect means less and less something that is useful nowadays, and that speaking a dialect is as good as speaking RP, even though it remains the language used as authority. And as Mr. Macmillan said, we are defined by our language and accents.